Are we doing a cold open or no?
I don't think so. I think we just roll right into it.
I mean, I've had 17 cold brews today. So
you have.
A bunch of them.
Fired up?
Yeah. Very fired up.
You got the Texags shirt on?
Yeah, you've got a Mississippi State shirt on.
Oh, well, no, I'm wearing that. It's National Championship Friday.
What?
NCF.
It's Championship Friday.
He told me about it.
Oh, okay.
Every Friday for the rest of my life, I will be wearing National Championship gear from the Mississippi State Bulldogs.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
You're just going to wear a baseball jersey forever?
Well, can't wear a football one.
Well, right.
You never know.
You never know. Also have an undershirt. But this isn't about me.
No, it's not.
Not about me.
No, it's not.
How are you holding up?
I'm fantastic.
You're fantastic.
Should we do a podcast?
Your shine's going away soon. Your school's shine.
I don't think so. I think that what you think I am going to say is not what I'm going to say.
I don't really care what you're going to say.
Okay. I honestly think that you will agree with my argument.
There's a lot of Aggies out there tweeting through it.
Treating what?
Tweeting through it.
I don't know. I have takes. Like
Okay.
let's talk about it. I have takes.
And I can't play The Eyes of Texas are upon you?
It's I mean, it really is a catchy
I
song.
wouldn't. It would just like.
We don't want to get kicked off of YouTube for an emergency podcast.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
We want to monetize it too.
Hi, welcome to Unnecessary Roughness, Season 3, Episode 2.5.
I'm about to say it's an
No,
emergency.
This is a full one.
Episode
decided.
3.
I think it's an emergency podcast.
Emergency podcast.
On a Friday afternoon.
Different podcast, but still sponsored by the beautiful and glorious High Noon Hard Seltzer, delicious watermelon peach. They got all the flavors. It's delicious.
They do. I think that I'll be drinking a lot of those this weekend.
Since we last
at the
left
Shore
you,
House, Jack.
Since we last left you at, is that okay with you, Jack?
I've never been the one that decides who goes and who doesn't. I just state my opinion, but I'm not gonna. This isn't
about this.
Yeah. Since we last left you, the
lot of shit's
entire
happened.
landscape of college football has begun to shift. It has begun to change. I don't believe what we're about to talk about is about Oklahoma, Texas, as much as it is about the entire framework of college football shifting on its axis, shifting into bigger money pods. That's what we're talking about. What has happened this week is not just two teams changing conferences. It's the entire sport shifting. And we'll talk about that. But as it affects our certain Texas A&M fan here, and
it affects you too.
all of you, not really, all of you out there, the SEC is expanding again, apparently, on Wednesday. We learned by the way, the fact that Texas and Oklahoma have been talking to the SEC for 6 months, and they leaked it while Jimbo Fisher was...
A&M leaked it. Brett Zorneman from Yes He Did. Yes He Did.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
Jimbo Fisher, while Jimbo Fisher is on stage, they leaked it while he was on stage at SEC Media Days. Diabolical move.
Well, first of all, the first person who had the story was an Aggie who leaked it first then?
Oh, no. You're saying, you got two
saying
different
an Aggie
things. You
reporter.
got two different things. Who reported it was an Aggie reporter.
Oh, well, yeah, it leaked from a Texas regent.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
They leaked it during. They leaked it to an Aggie reporter while Jimbo Fisher was on stage.
Right. I don't understand why that's like whatever.
It's
keep talking.
It's neither here nor there. It doesn't. But it's
like,
diabolical.
Am I supposed to cry about that?
It's fun. You're not supposed to cry.
It was intentional though.
It was
Of course
certainly
it
intentional.
was. Every news drop is intentional.
You're very defensive off the top.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I already know what you guys are going to try to do.
I'm not
going
gonna
to
do anything.
No, keep going.
I'm going to talk about the fact that we've got Texas and Oklahoma headed to the SEC.
Yes.
We've got two programs that always said the SEC's overrated, the SEC's overrated.
That is
Now
true.
they're running to get their money. We also have two programs the SEC fans said they're overrated, and welcoming them with open arms. So hypocrites on both sides.
Did you see the whole thing that a bunch of Texas fans are saying that they'll never chant SEC? We're like, the first time you play a Big Ten school, I can guarantee you'll be chanting SEC.
Never play for a national title. Anyway, so we got Texas, we got Oklahoma. On Wednesday, it leaked. On Thursday, it started to gain a lot of traction. And by this morning, what have we pretty much peeled back the onion and found out this thing's been in the works for a while, and this thing is far down the tracks, and it appears to be happening. And I'm comfortable saying that it will happen.
I think it's absolutely going to happen. Kirk Bohls this morning just lit Twitter on fire by basically saying that, not basically, he said it's been in the works for 6 months, that A&M has been left out of the conversation. And there are so many different ways I could go with this, but my first reaction is, Greg Sankey did a shitty thing if you're an A&M fan. You are allowed to be mad if he left A&M out of the conversation. But A&M is not Alabama. A&M is not Georgia. A&M, I think it's a very shitty thing to do. At the same time, it's obviously going to happen. So why are we crying about it? We can't stop it.
I don't know why would A&M be in that conversation at all. If they're talking to Texas and OU about joining, they're not going to include Vanderbilt in the conversation. They're not going to include Tennessee in the conversation. So why would they include Texas A&M?
Well, they included all of the schools in the conversation except for A&M.
No, I guess that's a lie.
I don't believe that's true.
That's what. But okay, so that's what Texas fans are running with. Like,
Okay.
oh, they left A&M out. Now, if we want to go back to 2010 when the original decision to have A&M go into the SEC and this whole gentleman's agreement rumor that's been going all over Twitter, and Dr. Lofton, who was the president of A&M at the time, spoke about it on ESPN. He spoke about it this morning on TexAgs too, that when Mike Slive, rest in peace, was the commissioner of the SEC and the presidents and the chancellors at the time in 2010, so we're talking about 11 years ago, they said that if say Florida State wanted to come in the SEC, Florida would be able to make that decision. If Clemson wanted to come into the SEC, that South Carolina would be able to make that decision.
Right.
I.e., if Texas wanted to come in the SEC, A&M would make that decision. Sure, that was in 2010. Not only are those presidents and chancellors, for the most part, not in place anymore, Mike Slive is not even the commissioner. He's not even on this planet anymore. So things have changed in 11 years, and that's okay to say. So this whole gentleman's agreement thing, like, again, Aggie fans have every right to be pissed about that, but it's a completely different conference than it was in 2010.
Can I say that if that gentleman's agreement actually existed, it's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard?
I mean, and
You should absolutely not allow South Carolina to block Clemson from
I
coming
completely
in. You
agree.
shouldn't allow Florida to block Florida State. They're all going to block them. Oklahoma State would block Oklahoma from leaving right now if they could. So
well, Baylor tried to block A&M from going to the SEC at the time. Now, I think that the biggest thing is, you're right, it's a bigger picture than just Texas and Oklahoma. It's a realignment. I mean, crazy things have happened. Like Kansas for basketball is now going to be in the Big Ten. I mean, for everybody, but like they won the basketball championships in the Big Ten. You're going to have to realign. You're going to look at schools like Baylor. That's probably going to be fucked. I think you're going to look at TCU is probably going to be fucked.
Okay.
But with A&M, I don't know why you're shaking your head. Like I don't
think they'll be fucked.
I don't think TCU and Baylor will be fucked. I think the Big 12 is fucked. I think the
Well,
Big 12
yeah,
is done.
But
It's about to
I
evaporate.
think other conferences like the Big Ten, like the ACC, are going to start looking at, for example, like the ACC is going to look at West Virginia and be like, okay, we want them.
Right.
The Big Ten is going to look at Iowa State, Kansas State,
Yeah.
whoever. We want them.
And the ACC and the Big Ten are about to get in a bidding war trying to get Notre Dame.
Right, exactly. Who's going to be running to get Baylor? I think Texas Tech goes to the Pac-12.
The Pac-12 will.
The
I
private
think
schools, I don't know. I mean, maybe, but I think Texas Tech is a lock for the Pac-12.
I think the Pac-12 is about to absorb some of the Big 12. I think whatever in the north part of the Big 12, Iowa State's got potential to go to the Big 10. Oklahoma State, I think Oklahoma State is the peach out there. I think they're the best overall athletic program that's going to be homeless by the Big 12. But I think we're heading towards 4 super conferences, 4 16-team conferences, and that means I don't think this is a boon for like San Diego State or Boise State or Cincinnati to get a shot at Power 5 now. I think this is the Power 5 realigning itself, putting itself in pods. You'll have an East Coast Conference of 16, which will be the ACC. You'll have a Midwest Conference. You'll have a South Conference, which is the SEC plus Texas, Oklahoma. And then you'll have everything west of there will be the Pac-12. It'll be 16 teams all west of there.
So from an Aggie standpoint, which is obviously why we're here, because that's the biggest thing that I've been seeing everybody talk about. From an Aggie standpoint, there are 2 things that I think can be true. And this is the way I truly, honestly feel. 1, it was a snaky move if Greg Sankey was lying to people in power at A&M, because reportedly he told them as of a couple weeks ago that this was not going to happen. Now, I don't know if that's true. This is all alleged. But if Greg Sankey did do that, then that's shitty. Also, the deal was made with Mike Slive, so Greg Sankey can technically do whatever he wants.
I've got to be devil's advocate here. I've got to counterpoint you.
Okay.
Greg Sankey's job is to lead the Southeastern Conference, not to take care of Texas A&M's feelings.
But those 2 things can be true. Like, you can, as an Aggie fan, you can be like, okay, it looks like we had this deal done behind our back. Well, it was done behind A&M's back.
This is what Brett McMurphy said on 1010XL, which is a Jacksonville radio station. Texas A&M being kept out of the loop is absolutely 100% inaccurate. Multiple SEC sources told me all university presidents had been a part of the process all along. Anything else is 100% false.
There's going to be so many different rumors going around, but of course, I've got all the Texas fans all up in my mentions like, oh, well, Big Brother still has more power. Here's the thing. Greg Sankey is allowed to do whatever he wants. You are, as an Aggie fan, allowed to be slighted or pissed about it, whatever. This whole whining and crying about Texas being in the same conference is the most pussy shit I've ever heard. It is insane to me. Like, we're sitting here trying to pretend as an Aggie like we're a bigger, better team than we were in 2010, which is why we went to the SEC.
Right.
This whole big brother thing, and I saw Andy Staples said it, Billy Lucci said it, the analogy that I really, truly believe is the perfect one is, yeah, like they clearly have a lot of power. No shit. They're the University of Texas. I'm the first one to say that. I've said this on this podcast a million times. But the big brother is now coming home 10 years later, and the younger brother is faster, has way more money, has a national championship head coach, looks a hell of a lot different than they did in 2010. So why are we all of a sudden acting like Jimbo Fisher's number 5 ranked Texas A&M in the country is the same team from 2010?
Yeah, I think the dynamic of you guys' rivalry is weird. It's like a lot of rivalries, though. Texas always tries to take we're the big brother, we're of this, you look up to us, we got the power. When in actuality, you Aggie fans shouldn't be trying to fight against that. You should just be saying, yeah, when we left 10 years ago, you said we wouldn't compete in the SEC. You said we had to run, and you said we had to go to another conference. You said all these things, and here 10 years later, you're running. You're coming here because that conference was nothing. Because that conference, with you as a tentpole, you had to come here to make the money you really want to make.
Well, and and you said it, and I know, again, like as an Aggie, dealing with Texas fans, and I mean, OU fans are kind of, they're not in my mentions as much, but it is like, you've spent the last 10 years making fun of the SEC because A&M is in it, and then now you want to come. Well, why? Because there's so much money, which is the same argument that everybody made in College Station 10 years ago, which was there's so much more money to be made in the Southeastern Conference. Here's my thing with this rivalry, which you have yelled at me plenty of times on this podcast.
I was about to do it right there, too.
And you have said, shut the fuck up and just play.
Yeah.
If A&M and Texas stayed in different conferences, having a non-conference rivalry would do nothing for A&M right now in 2021.
That argument makes no sense.
I will tell you why. Because if let's say it's just a 2-game home and home.
Yeah.
If you split, A&M doesn't get anything out of it. If you lose to whatever, let's actually put it on the line, put it back in a conference, and make it mean something.
But Kayce, I mean, there's a lot of non-conference rivalries.
Like, do you really care at the end of the
Clemson, South Carolina, Iowa State, Georgia Tech, Florida State.
But at the end of the day,
Miami,
usually,
Florida.
I understand that, but it doesn't have the same consequences if you lose to your
rival.
But
it's still. But here's the thing: it didn't need the consequences because it's a rivalry game. Okay.
But from an A&M standpoint and from a Texas standpoint, both fan bases have gone back and forth, and both fan bases have had the leg up, saying like, "Well, our school didn't want to play you. Our school didn't want to play you." Both of those things have happened. A&M wanted to play Texas, they said no. Texas wanted to play A&M, they said no. So why not put them in the same conference? Because it's obviously going to happen. The University of Texas has so much power in college football. So Aggie fans that are trying to say that that's like a slight, I gotta
stop you there.
Like they have power because they're with OU.
I gotta stop you there.
How?
This notion that Texas has all this power. This is about this move is about where the power really lies. The power really lies in college football with the ones who pay the TV contracts.
Correct.
The power really lies with the
ESPN.
ESPNs, the CBS. Mm-hmm. That's who has the power. This notion that Texas has all this power. If Texas had all this power, Texas wouldn't be an 8-4 team trying to recreate the magic right now. No, hold on. They wouldn't be. They finally recognize they have to get over this idea that they need to be the king on the throne. They finally recognize instead of a conference rotating around us and us trying to carry the Iowa States and the Kansas States of the world, we can go right over here and we can join up with a conference that is making more money than any other conference, and we can take our cachet and Oklahoma's cachet and make it that much bigger. This isn't about This is about Texas ceding some power because they can't.
Their fans don't think that.
They can't walk into this conference and puff their chest out. This is our conference. They're one of 16 teams now. Yeah. They're not one. They're not a swinging dick in this conference.
Well, and as a Mississippi State fan, like you're recognizing that because you know who runs this conference, and it's Alabama. And
No, I disagree. I think this conference is one that has been able to avoid the pitfalls that happen in the Big 12. Texas runs the Big 12.
Correct.
They ran the Big 12, and Oklahoma dominates the Big 12 on the field, but they are subservient. They're right there with Texas. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Alabama doesn't run the conference.
but I'm
Florida
saying, like,
doesn't run the conference. Like it's
But Texas can't come
Greg
into the
Sankey runs the
SEC
conference.
and say, like, we're the big dicks now. Like, they just can't do
No.
that. They can't do it. And I do. So it's really interesting when you look in the conspiracy theory that's out there, which talks about TV contracts, is that a lot of people believe that because the CBS and ESPN deal for the SEC has been done, that ESPN saw this as a way to get rid of the failing Longhorn Network, which has been failing for years and years and years, and absorb it into the SEC network. And that therefore fucks over Fox, because Fox now no longer has the Big 12 package that anybody gives a fuck about. Because if Oklahoma and Texas are now on the SEC network and ESPN, who's watching Big 12 games on Fox?
all right. I will let you. Do you want to have the floor and get through your takes, or you want me? I have a couple questions
You
that
have
I
questions?
believe.
I don't
are,
think Texas would make that much more money going to the SEC. I think they already make. They probably, if you look at the Big 12, how much you make off of media deals, and then how much you make off of, for Texas, the Longhorn Network, which is probably $15 to $20 million a year, going over to the SEC won't make them that much more money. However, it would, I guess, they're really concerned about how they're getting out-recruited.
When I was a kid, actually I was 18, 20 years old, and I had a friend that we used to argue about baseball, and I used to say, this Barry Bonds and Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire, they're making a mockery of this game due to steroids. You can tell they're all jacked up. And he would always say, I don't believe that steroids really help you hit a baseball. And my answer to that was, if steroids didn't help, nobody would do it. If Texas wasn't going to make that much more money, Texas wouldn't go to the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they already make the most money out
They
of
make a shit ton of money.
Right.
But
They'll make
the
more.
money, the prestige, they're going to make more.
There's
There's always more.
But I don't think.
Then why would they go?
I think it's why would they go? Because I think it's more football concerned. So it is for money, but I don't know if it's.
Jack, I think
Yeah.
this is not to be sarcastic.
No,
I believe the answer is always money first.
always.
Like hardcore money. Now once you get
Everybody
past
in the SEC is going to make more money.
But
if
once you get
Texas and
past money
Oklahoma
being
are
the
there.
reason, I think there are football byproducts that are good for Texas. I would agree with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's, I mean, to a conference, like, first of all, the Longhorn Network has been hemorrhaging money. Like, and ESPN this has been going on for years and years. It's not just like all of a sudden ESPN is saying the Longhorn Network is making money. I don't think it's ever actually made any
I don't
money.
think the Longhorn Network needs to even be uttered anymore.
Well, no, I mean, it's just like, yeah, it's gone. It's gone. And I think that ESPN is looking at it and say, okay, like, now we have the rights to the SEC. We took them away from CBS.
Yeah.
We can get rid of a network that's hemorrhaging money. And now the SEC network is going to have two national powerhouse names, whether they're powerhouse on the field or not at this time. Obviously, Oklahoma has been. But Oklahoma and Texas in the SEC, of course ESPN is going to want to do it. Of course the SEC is going to want to do it.
Shehan
Jaraja made this point last night, which was the one that I made just now. It's really not that much about the money for Texas and Oklahoma. They'll make more, not a whole lot more. It's the negative perception of the Big 12 among recruits. They're tired of losing recruiting battles to the SEC brand, and they think joining could fix it.
Fair enough.
It is fair, but here's my thing with recruiting,
I think
too.
that's a byproduct, though, and not the underlying reason. But
Right.
I think
like,
it is the reason. But
just
mean,
recruiting, you move your entire...
You're always going to recruit well at Texas. You're always going to recruit well at OU. I don't understand. And this is from an Aggie standpoint, too. Everyone that's freaking out. Of course, there's going to be a difference if you have Texas in the SEC in the same state. It is going to take a little bit of a knock on recruiting. But Jimbo Fisher has won a national title. He's going to be fine recruiting. Texas is always going to be fine recruiting no matter what conference they're in because they're the University of Texas, and so is OU. So recruiting being the number one reason that this is happening just seems like an excuse to me.
Question number one, which I believe when this move happens is maybe it's the arrogant SEC fans that ask it. Maybe it's the people around the country. I don't know, but it has answers. Can Texas and Oklahoma compete on a year in year out basis at their current or desired levels? How about that's a better one? Can Texas and Oklahoma compete at their desired levels in the SEC?
I think it depends on who you ask.
I think it's a hard yes.
I think so. Well, yes.
150%.
Yes, but it depends on who you ask from. Like, I mean, again, I haven't seen near as much from OU fans, but from Texas fans, like they're so concerned about it making A&M look bad that they haven't really started to process yet. And again, it's brand new. I mean, this has happened in the last 48 hours, but they haven't started to process yet. Like, oh shit, like now we're going to be in a conference with Alabama and with Florida and with Georgia. It's like all they want to do is make fun of A&M. And again, if you want to hold on to the fact that this decision could have potentially been made without A&M's input, fine. Like if you want to be mad at that or you want to say, oh, look, like A&M has no power, that's fine. but I don't think they've really realized what they've walked into yet. And A&M has now been in this conference for 10 years. They do have the leg up in the SEC because they've now been playing this competition for 10 years.
No, A&M's in a very good spot.
I don't understand why Aggies don't see that.
I do think from the outside looking in, it can look embarrassing for A&M.
I don't know how.
Well, just from the outside, I'm not saying that I feel it, but it can look embarrassing that A&M was able to. I use this analogy on Twitter, but A&M was basically a high school student that was getting bullied at school.
Mm-hmm.
They transferred. They ended up in a great school with a bunch of hot people, and everything was going great. And all of a sudden, the bullies have transferred in now too.
Yeah, but in the time that they transferred, they became a completely different program with a national championship coach. With I mean, we're talking about a team that was talked about to be in the college football playoff last year.
I guess there's nothing more there's nothing more abundant in college football than pettiness.
It is petty.
But as far as pettiness goes, A&M rivalries are petty,
For sure.
and A&M being able to say, well, we're in the SEC has always been a huge leg up for you
Yes, I do agree with that. But here's the way that I see it is that if it's going to happen, why are we going to sit at home and cry about it? Because it just makes us look like whiny bitches. If you are really this upset about this move happening, what is that going to change? It's like when people complain about when a president gets elected. Like, you can complain all you want. It's not going to change. Texas and OU are going to probably be in the SEC, 99% at this point.
Ari Wasserman had a really great article yesterday. He's the head recruiting guy at The Athletic, and he called this Texas A&M's recruiting nightmare. Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC, and I fairly agree with that.
Do you think that a national championship coach in Jimbo Fisher and a top 5 program is all of a sudden not going to be able to recruit?
Well, the national championship coach won it at
another
school.
Has he ever had a problem recruiting ever?
I think his last few years at Florida State, it did not go well, for sure.
Based on what?
Based on
he didn't get any good players.
Well, I mean, but he was able to go make $75 million in the SEC.
No, but the question you asked was,
but
it didn't go well on the field.
Like, all of a sudden, now that OU and Texas are in the SEC, like, Jimbo Fisher's just not a good recruiter.
No, he
No.
is.
Like,
that's the narrative.
Recruiter.
That's the narrative.
Well, I didn't
that
even
Jack-
get to finish what I
Stop.
had.
He is a good recruiter, but it makes his recruiting job much harder.
Of course it does.
Yeah. I agree.
Why? Who? I mean, nobody's
Well, no,
saying
you're-
What is
opposite.
the worst nightmare, I would say?
You
can go into.
It's not a great scenario.
You can go into every single recruit's house that is getting. Maybe it's not in the house, but you get what I'm saying. In Texas,
Yes.
in Oklahoma, and the same people that are getting recruited by Texas and Oklahoma, and say, "Hey, you want to come to the conference where now you'll make more money personally, and you're playing on better TV networks at better times and whatnot,
Right.
better than Texas and Oklahoma. Why do you want to go and play Kansas when you can come here
I
and play?"
completely agree, but that's the pitch that A&M has been giving since
Right,
2012.
but,
so why?
But Kayce, now Texas and Oklahoma
Yeah,
can give the
can give
pitch.
the
Yeah.
pitch.
Okay, I totally understand that. I'm not saying that it's not a disadvantage recruiting. I'm not
I don't
saying that it's
understand why you're
like
fighting back on that. It is a nightmare scenario for Jimbo.
I don't think it's a nightmare. It's a problem. It's a headache. It's
Okay.
definitely not going to be a good thing. A nightmare scenario makes it look like all of a sudden Jimbo Fisher's not going to be able to walk in and say, "Hey, we almost made it to the college football playoff last year. Hey, we've been getting really good. We're ranked in the top 10." Sure, it's a headache. Sure, it's a problem. It's not a fucking
Here's some
nightmare
really good
DEFCON thing. Like, and anybody who says that, like, Jimbo Fisher's not worried about that.
Here's some really good
I bet he
stats.
is.
I mean, he's worried.
Yeah.
When you say nightmare scenario, it's like all of a sudden, like, let's say Texas and OU are in the SEC in 2022, which
Yeah.
is the earliest it could be, obviously, but probably 2023. That, like, all of a sudden, Jimbo Fisher is just not going to be able to recruit.
Well,
I mean, Mike Sherman could recruit at A&M.
2012,
Dennis Francione could recruit
we're
at
going
A&M.
to bring that up right now. From 2012 to 2021, Texas and Texas A&M average recruiting ranking was the same.
Mm-hmm.
When they were both in the Big 12, Texas's was 6th and A&M's was 20th.
That was 12 years ago.
Well, that's
But that's the thing. It's not A&M is not the same program. Like,
Okay.
I understand for sure. There are definitely pitfalls to this. That's the most obvious statement ever. But it's like all of a sudden everybody's brains who are trying to make A&M versus Texas and OU arguments forget that A&M has made massive strides. Now, obviously OU has been a national powerhouse. They've gotten embarrassed in the playoffs, but I'm not saying A&M's a better program, but I'm saying where A&M as a program individually in 2012 versus where they are now is a different story.
Question number 2. How will Texas and Oklahoma adjust from owning their own conference to being part of one?
I think that's another question that again, these we're going to see play out, but that the fans have not started to realize because they think, oh, Texas and Oklahoma are going into the SEC with a lot of power. Now, I don't think the schools think that. I don't think the presidents and the chancellors and the football programs think that. I think that the fans think that. I think that they look at it as a way to march in, which is why from an A&M standpoint, I see all these people on the TexAgs forums like, oh, we should treat them like shit. Like they think they have all the power. It's like they're all going to be in the same conference and they're not going to be the big swinging dick like they were in the Big 12.
Now, are we headed towards 14 pods in this league, or are we headed towards 2 18 divisions? What are we doing?
I mean, if you had
a southwest
Arkansas,
of Arkansas, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Texas.
that would be awesome. That would be awesome. Like I want.
You'd get fucked.
No, we wouldn't. Not in
No.
that scenario. In that scenario, that puts us with actually. The one I saw was Missouri.
I don't think that one
Missouri, A&M, Texas, and Oklahoma.
I don't know how that would make
From
sense.
the SEC, it was Pod D is Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas. Pod C, LSU, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, A&M.
That's fine. I'd rather get me away from Alabama.
That's fine,
You're
but I
not
also
going to be
feel
in the
like
pod with Alabama, which is
I hope
surprising because you're
Well,
so close.
geographically.
See,
Right.
no, yeah, we
And
are
they're not-
close, but Alabama and Auburn should slide east.
Yeah,
now.
you're right. You're
Can
right. You're right.
I would like to just say this, and this might be, and I said this when I walked in the office and I was talking to like Big Ev about it from a Big Ten standpoint. Like I understand I might be in the minority with this, but if Texas is going to be in the SEC, I want to be in the same pot as them.
Of course
Like
you do.
I don't like this whole like the reason that Texas fans are saying A&M is scared is because A&M fans are whining about how we've been done wrong. Well, if you think we've been done wrong, that's fine. If you want to take this gentleman's agreement from Mike Slive in 2010 as gospel, that's fine. But it's going to happen. So let's just play them. Let's just play. Let's shut up and play.
You guys running from each other should be over. You should be.
I
You should
completely
be joined at
agree.
the hip in this conference now.
Well, and that's why, again, maybe I'm in the minority, and I'm not saying like I'm celebrating this move, like I'm super happy that it's going to happen because there are going to be headaches, there are going to be speed bumps. Obviously, Twitter is a dumpster fire right now, but the reality is that it's going to happen. So instead of crying about it and being mad at the SEC and whatever, just go out and play because if you look at right now where these programs stand, I'm not talking about historically, right now, A&M is in a good spot.
Okay, so you have several takes, right?
Yes.
All right, I've got one more question I want to discuss.
Okay.
And then I'll cede the floor to you, and then I will react to you. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. My third question is, and this is a bigger one. What happens to the rest of the country? Now,
That's huge.
I immediately believe we are headed towards a future of 4 16-team super conferences. I feel like we're heading towards the ACC picking up a couple teams, the Big Ten picking up a couple teams, the Pac-12 absorbing what they can of the Big 12, and the SEC having 16 teams. Therefore, you have 4 16-team conferences. I think right now it's 65, so there will be, I guess, one. But and then Notre Dame will get an offer to go to the Big Ten or the ACC, and BYU perhaps slides into the Pac-12 if politically they can pull that off. But I think that is where we're heading. I think that yeah, you're going to see a lot. I think the Big 12 is done. It's over.
Well, it has to be. I mean, the reason, like, if you look at the Big 12 and the teams that Texas has essentially pushed out of the conference, whether you want to say that they left because of it, I mean, you look at Nebraska, Colorado, A&M, Missouri, like, Texas was always at the center of those decisions. If Texas is no longer there and OU, who has been better on the field than Texas for the last decade, is gone, like, who's now the guy? Who's now the guy?
I think OU's been better in the field in Texas the last 3 or 4 decades. But
you know what I mean? It's
yeah,
like
you're right.
if
You're
the
right.
two big
it's
poles,
done.
it's done.
They're a circus tent with no poles in the middle.
Right.
There's just and so I think logically, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, if they can get the security of the Big Ten, that would be great. Kansas with their strong basketball certainly is a desirable for the Big Ten. I think Oklahoma State could also be attractive to the Pac-12. Oklahoma State's a very well-rounded program, and I think are the most attractive program out there that could be a free agent here.
West Virginia to the ACC makes complete sense.
You said Oklahoma State is the most attractive program outside of Texas and Oklahoma, right? I don't know if you said it in passing.
I say they're the most. I'm sorry, because Notre Dame's more attractive. Notre
In
Dame,
the Big 12.
Oklahoma State is the most attractive team that is left without a home right now.
Why?
I would say
I
Iowa
think it's
State.
Baylor.
Baylor's small school, not nearly as big a fan base, not nearly as big. Right now, they're peaking. Obviously, they won a national title in basketball. Last 10 years have been great for them in football, but they're almost like a bottle rocket shooting across the sky that could pop. Baylor doesn't have the cachet. Oklahoma State, I know T. Boone Pickens is dead, but they have got a ton of money. They've got a history. I mean, they've popped in football. They're good usually. They're great occasionally. Basketball, they're good usually. They're great occasionally. Like they've got a very good, well-rounded program in the other sports. Baseball, they got a good program. Softball, they got a national championship caliber program. So I think Oklahoma State is the best overall.
Then who's two?
I mean, I don't think Iowa State is a bad choice for the Big Ten.
What's Iowa State outside of right now?
I mean, I think if you're looking at, first of all, like
I think
geographically,
TCU's number 2.
TCU.
Okay.
I think TCU
Is
and
it
Baylor.
baseball?
But see, here's the thing: TCU and Baylor are like two sides of the same coin. If you take if a conference Pac-12 takes TCU, they got to take Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're a package deal. Don't they seem like they're inseparable?
Yeah, I think Baylor's going to the Pac-12, and that's a big win for the Pac-12, along with Oklahoma State either going to the big. Oklahoma State's a big win regardless. It's probably 1A, 1B for me. You probably convinced me more that they're number 1 than number 2 in my mind. However, I don't know. Maybe I'm just like I'm wrong in my head thinking that Baylor is something that you want to have on your side if you are a conference right now. If I'm a commissioner.
Yeah. If you went in the micro,
right?
This moment, Baylor probably edges them. But if you pull back and look at the history of the last 30 years,
and fan base,
before that,
but TCU doesn't edge them, right?
I don't think so. I think
Baylor and
TCU. I would put
Baylor and TCU are the same thing.
Right. Well, and I do think so. I mean, again, like I the only Big Ten fan that I've spoken to today is Big Ev, but I mean, he didn't even mention as a fan TCU or Baylor. He was mentioning obviously Kansas for basketball. He mentioned Oklahoma State. He mentioned Iowa State, and he mentioned Notre Dame. Notre Dame is the big thing here because between the ACC and the Big Ten, and I know they have a deal with the ACC, and I think the ACC network deal is what's like 2036 or something.
33, I believe.
It's like insane, by the way.
But I believe
the Big Ten is going to make a huge pitch for Notre Dame because they can't just sit. Like the Big Ten is now going to have to do something if the SEC is absorbing the University of Texas and Oklahoma.
Every conference is going to have to do something.
But I mean the Big Ten, if they, it's the two temples.
If SEC is taking in two powers, the Big Ten adding Iowa State and Kansas doesn't do a whole hell of a lot. Doesn't do much. Doesn't really add much to the coffers. Mm-hmm. But the Big Ten reaching in their pocket and reaching in their goodwill and saying, Big Notre Dame will allow you to have a TV deal. It's not as great as it is for you right now, but you'll be able to share part of our deal. Plus, you'll be able to keep some of your deal, or we'll structure it. The Big Ten would have to make a splash. Notre Dame would be the biggest splash available. There would be a bidding war with the ACC. Ultimately, I think the Big Ten would win that. Mm-hmm. But that bidding war might conflict with Notre Dame thinking, we fit culturally better in the ACC. So,
well, and I mean, does Notre Dame even have to make that decision?
I think
because
they
with
do
a 12-team playoff, though, they could easily look at it and be like, do we have to?
We're heading towards. Here's what we're heading towards. We're heading towards the Power 5 breaking off as its own thing, its own division. Mm-hmm. And the guy who's going to be in charge of that, and the guy who's calling all the most powerful man in college football is Greg Sankey.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
And we're heading towards the Power 5 breaking off and being its own thing, right? And I think ultimately, as they do that, and as they pod up, and they squat up, I think the money-making decision makers are going to say, Notre Dame, you've had a great ride this whole time. You've been able to live in your own zip code. You've been able to call your own shots, but it's time to squat up. It's time to get on a team. It's time. We don't live in that world anymore. This is not 1945. We don't have young guys. The Notre Dame is not on the wall of every young kid. This is 2021. This is the world we live in. Notre Dame, pick a fucking conference. I believe we're heading towards that.
I would love that.
Will Notre Dame buckle to that or not?
Well, I think it's more, will the NBC allow them to do that?
I think there will be, if the Big Ten's able to structure it away, like you and NBC can keep doing business together, and we'll. And
then what's their deal with the ACC?
All the sports are already there.
Yeah, that's
there's there's so much that goes into can they be bought out with that? I don't know what the contract looks like, but I know that right now, as it stands, that if Notre Dame is going to join a conference, it has to be the ACC.
I think everything can be bought out.
I do too.
That's my way of thinking in life. But yeah, you mentioned one earlier. I think eventually we see an ACC that has West Virginia, and if ACC were able to sit back and grab West Virginia and Notre Dame, they might win this whole fucking thing. I mean, that would be an outstanding a couple of ads. If they don't, maybe West Virginia comes in. Maybe they go back and grab a Maryland back from the Big Ten because there will be a little movement. Now, here's what I don't think there's going to be. Now, I feel very strongly about this. because you have a lot of people saying, well, the Pac-12 will grab Boise State and they'll grab San Diego State and somebody will grab Houston to I think this is about the Power 5 realigning and restructuring. And the Power 5 long since decided we're the powers that be in college football, and we're going to protect us, we're going to rally, and we're going to build it. The Power 5 is breaking off. I don't think the Power 5 is looking to add much. I don't think there's a lot of programs out there. Cincinnati ain't going to land in the Big Ten here. Boise State ain't landing in the Pac-12. This is not an expansion. This is a realignment to line everybody's
I agree
pockets.
with that. It is all about money from across the board, and I do agree with you. I love the hypotheticals. Like, it's fun to look at. And
UCF ain't landing nowhere.
No,
I don't believe any of that.
So then,
stuff.
does the G5 realign and create its own power?
Which leads me to my last point, and then I was going to cede to Kayce. My last point is this: it is time the Group of Five realize what they have, what they could be, and stop catching the loose change from the Power 5. Power 5 is about the Power 5. The Power 5 is about lining their pockets. The Power 5, they might look like they're letting you in the playoff. Power 5 doesn't want you in the playoff. They don't want you competing for the championships. The Power 5 is about the Power 5. If the G5 were to realize we have the AAC, we have a great conference there. We have some good football teams there, and across the country, whether it's Boise State or Nevada or just other teams, we've got a lot of interesting parts. If the Group of Five got together and said we're going to have a Group of Five national championship, we're going to have an 18 playoff, I'm watching the shit out of that.
Absolutely.
I think them existing in their own world is better.
The playoff just realigned,
Right.
so, and I think I hate the idea of the G5 championship.
See what's the problem is I'm in the middle of both, because I see, like, I love the
It would
idea
be
that
cool.
it would be
You're right.
cool to see, and from like a gambling standpoint and from its own like life, it would be great. But what I love about the playoff expansion as it is, it now allows for the G5 to get into the playoff and actually like have a UCF play Alabama, have whoever Cincinnati play Notre Dame or whoever it may be, and I like that because then that ends all the arguments of, well, the G5 should be able to be in the playoff because now they're actually going to get to play the Power 5.
I don't think that's a long-term plan to getting money coming in, though.
I
feel
agree,
like
but I think
if
from a fan
they were able
standpoint,
to
it sounds
craft their
fun.
own identity and their own entity, I think that would be the best. Now, it might be impossible, but
A G5 playoff would be so much fun.
I think it'd be fun for
I like
us,
how
but
you're
not
agreeing with
fun.
both of us.
Not fun for the
Because
program.
then the winner of that is going to be like, all right, let us into the big one.
For
It's
sure.
Not, doesn't mean the same thing. Look at Sam Houston.
no,
North
they're not worried
Dakota.
about the big. It's time to realize the big one doesn't want you.
No, but the big one just realigned to want them.
I don't know, want them, but allow, like they realign to allow them to potentially be in the landscape.
I'm pretty hard in the stands.
That was
sorry.
You paused just too long.
I know. But I'm pretty hard in my stance
Yeah.
that the G5 should not even think about
Okay.
being their own thing. However,
That's fine.
I understand, but I think they can also align themselves. And if I'm a recruiter, I would honestly say it's easier to recruit to a Cincinnati, UCF, or BYU right now than recruit to Vanderbilt, recruit to
Kansas football.
football,
here's where that
recruit
falls
to the
apart.
haves and have-nots of the Pac-12 and the Big Ten that are going to happen.
I think where that falls apart is the name, image, and likeness money with those fan bases will just never equal even the Vanderbilts of the world.
I think Desmond Ridder right now is 100% more valuable, along with the cornerback for Cincinnati. That's a Stanley Gardner or something. I forget his name.
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel. You can use him for example too.
He's much more valuable than any player on Vanderbilt football, Kansas football, Colorado football. Like, we could keep going and going and going.
Fair enough. Good points.
And I think the NIL stuff does make this so much more interesting.
Can I just before I transition to you
Yes.
getting your points across? Can we just sit back and realize that the past 2 months have been more change than the past
It's insane.
20 years?
Well, we look back at 2009, 2008. I'm sure you guys all remember how crazy that was. That was just the warm-up.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
we thought
In
that
the
was
last
the
30
craziest shit
yeah,
ever.
yeah.
In the last 2 months, the transfer portal has become as more active and more of a thing than anybody ever thought it could.
Yeah, especially in basketball.
Players are now making money on their likenesses. The Texas, Oklahoma have changed conferences, and the entire world has changed in 30 days.
It's crazy. It truly is. And as you see, like, who was it, Katie? You were going back and forth. Was it Chief from Chicago today about
Notre Dame.
he's like, oh, like I hate change. I hate change in college
Well,
football.
that's a Notre Dame fan. Yeah.
Right, but it's like
Just because tradition doesn't mean it's right or the best thing.
But the rest of the country has to embrace that. I mean, 2 months ago, like, when did the NIL happen? Did that happen 2 months
July
ago?
1st.
July 1st.
What day is it today?
Almost end of July.
24th.
Yeah.
Fourth.
Okay,
Third.
so we're talking not even a month. Like, we thought that was going to be like the biggest thing, and obviously it's been a massive, massive thing. But to think that we're now 3 weeks removed from that, and we have another massive
But I think
storyline.
Everything changed because of that, and they knew that was coming for the past 6 months, and that's why.
Well,
It's a bunch of
what they also knew was coming was the Texas-Oklahoma shift. That's why we started getting this 12-team playoff. Everything's been happening behind the scenes.
yeah.
We've been like we've
It would
been
be
in the
great
dark.
if we had like a true insider who just
But
gave us the insight.
there are going to be people that start talking eventually.
Oh yeah,
Can I ask you
There'll
guys
be
a
a
question?
great book in a few years.
Can I ask you guys a
Yeah.
question?
Yeah.
Did any of you get any DMs last week saying this
Yes.
was coming?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Well, no, I got it on the night before, and then I'm gonna be honest. I had a dream about it, and
Yeah,
I was
right.
like, Oklahoma.
happened,
No,
or-
that Oklahoma and Texas were in SEC, and
Oh.
I almost
Dream
I
weaver.
almost tweeted out, just had a dream. Oklahoma and Texas were in SEC. Then Katie came over 5 hours later to my desk and was like, "Did you see what's happening?" And I was like, "Oh wow."
You missed
But
on
we
that
did
one.
get. There was the one guy who told me. I'm sure it's probably the same guy with
I
you.
got
because-
2 or 3 DMs.
because
yeah.
the guy who listens to the podcast told me, but I just didn't believe him because it was like but he must be in the know somehow.
I kept getting the Texas fans that still think it's funny to spell Aggie Aggy, being like, you don't realize what's coming for Aggie. And so I did have an inkling, but the idea that this has been going on for 6 months and it's just now being leaked, and yes, like, an A&M reporter reported it, but a Texas Regent, I mean, it was obviously calculated when it came out and why it
Grayson
came out.
Hill, shout out, he's probably listening.
Hi-
On
Hi, Grayson.
Tuesday at 10:30 p.m., I think he also messaged Unnecessary Roughness's Twitter, hearing very strong rumors that an announcement of Texas and Oklahoma.
Who's he a fan of? Can you see?
Clemson.
Oh, shout out Grayson. I feel like this is one of those moments for college football that we're all going to look back on and be like, well, it was so fucking crazy, but it ended up being really good for the sport. And I think first of all, and I've said this before, I think A&M playing Texas is good for college football. And I understand that I grew up in that rivalry. I know, like you've said, you didn't necessarily care. I know you said that you
I
do.
completely agree.
I think that is good for the sport. All the politics surrounding it right now, especially in the state of Texas, like, let's not even, I mean, the governor being involved in this and like all the different stuff that's going to mean for him, that's its own crazy fucking storyline. I don't even care to talk about that. But I think A&M and Texas playing each other is good for the sport. I also think that there are going to be a lot of storylines that come out over the next few months or over the next couple seasons, whatever, that are going to piss off every fan base involved in some form or fashion because people are going to start talking.
Let me just rebut that. So please don't take offense at this.
Okay.
I don't think playing Texas A&M matters even a little for the sport. I think it's
Oh,
a
I
rivalry that
disagree.
should have been played the whole time.
No, it mattered more.
It was ridiculous that it wasn't
That's
played.
my point.
It
That's
was ridiculous
Just
it
means
wasn't
more now.
played. It was ridiculous it wasn't played. But I don't think that moves the needle. I think what moves the needle here, what matters for the sport, is those weekends in the fall, in September and October, when Oklahoma would have been playing Iowa State, Kansas State, Baylor, and TCU, they will now be playing LSU, Georgia, Florida.
Absolutely.
You will now have a preponderance and an abundance of gigantic games. I don't think Texas A&M, I look at that, it doesn't mean anything to me. Good for you guys because you need to play. Every team needs a rival, and they need to be able to beat their rival or lose their rival and be happy and mad because of it. But in the grand scheme of things, the utter riches that college football fans now get to enjoy. Texas always gets to sit over there in the Big 12 and say, if we were over there, we were over there. Well, guess what? Now you get to go to Athens. Now you get to go to
Tuscaloosa.
Gainesville. Now Gainesville gets to come to you.
Right.
So
So-
now we get to find out.
So that's one of my biggest points. And again, like I know I've been, I've said a whole bunch of them, but my biggest point sitting here as an Aggie fan. Now I agree with you. It's the micro macro. Like A&M Texas is a smaller reason to be excited about this than what you just said. Absolutely, from a national standpoint. But Jack agrees with me. I do think that rivalry on Thanksgiving again is going to be awesome. But my whole thing is that this is going to be, and I always fuck this quote up, but like the rising tide, it's the ships, like everybody's going to make more money. Everybody's going to be better now that two of these massive programs are going to be in the SEC. And yes, it looks quote embarrassing that this decision could have potentially been made without A&M, and A&M can't have their gentleman's agreement. But from where I sit, I like where A&M is at right now. I want them to be able to play Texas in a conference where it matters. Because, again, non-conference, I didn't want to see that happen. Because we wanted to play them, they wanted to play us, whatever. Now, it actually matters every single year. And this whole running scared thing and crying about, like, oh, like, Texas is going to be in our conference. Like, why? Why are you scared right now? Because it's not 2010. It's not 2000. It's a completely different program. And you have 10 years in the SEC of experience. It's not like Texas went 11-1 last year. Now, Oklahoma could be a problem, and I think Texas will compete. But A&M fans should not be sad about this, in my opinion. You can be pissed off. Being sad doesn't make sense to me.
I also think you guys have a very weak athletic director.
Ross Bjork?
I think you guys, when you went for an athletic director and you hired
That's
a
his
guy,
name, right?
and you hired a guy who was
BJOR.
you hired a guy who
Come on,
allowed
Wes.
a coach to pay for recruits and get hookers. You brought that guy in. Don't be surprised when that guy gets fleeced.
See,
That guy got fooled by Hugh Freeze's ugly ass.
Oh, well, we knew it was going to come back to
No,
that.
I'm saying I'm
No,
serious.
But here's the thing: is that I
he was in the hostage video.
Yeah, that
he
is
like
true.
bungled that.
That's true.
And you hired him.
I forgot about that hostage video. That was sad.
Right.
I think that
He almost
now,
ruined Ole Miss football, and you hired him to run a much bigger, better program.
And I do think, I guess I've never really thought about it that way, so that is a thing. But
he's a puppet.
I don't think it matters who is A&M's athletic director at this point. I think that if Greg Sankey wanted Texas and OU, and Texas and OU wanted to go, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter at all. And you said this earlier. He is the most powerful man in college football right now. So if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Let's play on the field. Let's see this whole idea of poor us, Texas and Oklahoma is going to come in and stomp all over us. Like, even if that is true, you can't stop it from happening. So embrace it and realize that now the competition in the SEC has just gotten even more fun. You're going to get to see OU on a like what's happening?
Katie just sent me a funny tweet.
Oh no. Right,
yeah.
like the
I always
A&M,
thought, yeah.
and here's just something I would say, like they're reportedly doing this vote, and it's like A&M's the only one. If I was Ross, if I was A&M right now, I'd be like, sure, come on, like take Texas. I don't give a shit.
No, though.
It would be, but it's like if it's 13-1,
right.
then what's
You're
the
right.
point?
Yeah,
I think
right.
it's going to be 13-1.
I do too, but
think
I
the SEC
wouldn't.
will allow A&M to vote no to save face.
Right.
However,
I think it would be like
this isn't really a vote.
No, of course it's not. That's what I'm saying. Like, so again, I think that there are two things that can then live by themselves. You can absolutely feel embarrassed that it looks like Texas has more power. That's fine. If that's, perception is reality there. If you want to believe that, you can be pissed off. Being sad.
I still don't understand what in y'all's minds
it's not in my mind.
makes you think, oh, that Texas has a lot of power. Texas is bending the knee and coming with hat in hand and joining a conference.
Because it is a false narrative, but and trust me, I've been getting Texas fans just blowing me up today because the narrative is, well, Texas wants to join the SEC. They're not going to ask A&M because they don't care about A&M to their face. That was an actual quote that I got. So that is quote perception. So if you want to be pissed off about that and you want to think Greg Sankey did you wrong that Mike Slive wouldn't want to do, that's fine. From a competition standpoint, this is only going to make college football better. As an Aggie, I'm not going to be scared of it. I mean, what's the point of being scared and crying about it? And I keep seeing this whole thing of like, oh, well, we're still the little brother. Like, no, like we've been in the conference for almost 10 years now. Just accept it and beat them on the field. That's the only thing that's going to stop this. Is recruiting going to be a little bit harder? Yes.
You do have a 10-year head start.
That's what I'm saying. It's a 10-year head
and
start.
I didn't realize that, and I think that's a really, really good point.
We have a 10-year head start in a conference that, and I'm not saying that all of a sudden that makes A&M astronomically better, but you do have that leg up of already being there, understanding the teams that you're playing, understanding the politics, and I know Jimbo Fisher won a national title at Florida State, but you have the guy that you think is going to bring the national title in College Station. They almost made the college football playoff last year. Texas has not been good, and again, maybe Sark is a difference maker. OU's been very good under Lincoln Riley.
You've
but
also had the biggest college football player of the last 10 years.
And I wasn't even going to bring him up because so many people said that I was
I'm
going
gonna bring
to.
him up.
But to me, as an Aggie, I'm sitting here just like, let's let this happen. Let's let this happen. And if it's going to, like, you can't stop it at this point. And like the meme that Katie just sent, like a Cheeto, like trying to like stop, the SWAT team coming in. Like, I would totally be, you want to talk about being petty? If I was A&M, I would be like, sure, come on. Like, we're not scared of you. Because when you get that, quote, scared mentality, and that's what people can hang on to, like if you sit home and cry about the fact that OU and Texas are just simply going to be in your conference, then it does make you look scared. Just accept that it's happening and beat the fuck out of them.
Boy, Steve Sarkisian's job description changed overnight, didn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
He knows the SEC though.
Not
Not that
not
well.
really.
Right, yeah.
Not really. No, he
Yeah,
was he was coaching. He was cheat code coaching. He was coaching Alabama's talent, but he did a very good job. He was great.
Yeah.
45 and 37 overall as a coach. Now he's got to resurrect the Texas program and get them ready to walk into the SEC. I don't think that's. I mean, I think he's capable of doing it, but it's interesting.
Tough.
Lincoln Riley, meanwhile.
That's the
It'll be time for him to show what he's about.
Well, you mentioned OU's defense a couple weeks ago. We talked about this. Like, all of a sudden, OU's defense does. I mean, I understand the SEC has moved way more towards offenses in the last, probably decade. But like, all of a sudden, let's say they do play in 2022, which is a real possibility. I do think it'll be 2 years, but let's just hypothetically say, like, these guys now have 1 year left in the Big 12 to figure out how to play Georgia, to figure out how to play Alabama, and it's not just about A&M or Missouri. It's about these big boys who have been here for a long time. How to play Mississippi State, how to play Ole Miss. It's not just about like one or two teams.
I think Oklahoma's ready to do it right now. You could announce they were moving this year, and I think Oklahoma would be fine. Texas, we'll see. I think Oklahoma for a long time has recruited like an SEC team. They go get 5 stars out of California and Florida and wherever they need them, and they're just a plug and play. They're much like Alabama. They recruit the very best of the best of the best of the best. I think Texas is one of those that gets lied to in recruiting a little bit, where they get a top 8 recruiting ranking that really should be like 15 because they're getting guys that get a little bit of bump, and it adds up across the board. I think Texas's top 10 recruiting classes have been fake and plastic, whereas Oklahoma's have been real. I think Oklahoma's ready to roll. I think yeah. But we talk about Oklahoma, we talk about Texas. Are they ready? Is Alabama ready for a yearly trip to a bi-yearly trip to Norman? I don't know.
It's going to be, but that's what makes this fun to me.
One more element here.
Oh, there's more.
Somebody,
but wait, there's more.
Somebody was like, was I talking to you this morning? I was talking to somebody, maybe Big T, and Stuart Mandel said, Oklahoma's making a mistake. They shouldn't just tie themselves to Texas and go to the SEC to risk getting beaten down by football, and when in the sake of making money, they should go somewhere else like the Pac-12 or Big Ten, where they can make the money and still dominate in football. I can't believe I'm saying this, but the path for Oklahoma to walk in and stay right where they are and dominate in the SEC in football is very much there. By the time let's say they get there in 2024, 2025, Nick Saban ain't coaching forever. Nick Saban's closer to midnight than he is, noon.
He might have that witch doctor working
Nick
on him,
Nick Saban will relinquish his hold on this conference within the next 3 to 4 to 5 years. Timing-wise, Lincoln Riley, who would be right in the middle of his Oklahoma run, could walk in and assume that spot. It's going to be a race for that spot. Jimbo Fisher will be, he'll be 10 years on at Texas, 5 or 6 years on at Texas A&M at that point. LSU, they'll have to find somebody other than Ed Orgeron, because he's not the guy that can grab that spot. He built a great team. He had the greatest team of all time, or greatest season of all time, but I don't think he's that guy that can have the number one program year in, year out. Kirby Smart will be trying to get it. I think Lincoln Riley will be able to, a true contender to get that post-Saban crown as the king of the SEC.
Isn't there also, though, and maybe it's behind closed doors, it's a different conversation, but doesn't it feel like no matter what Texas does, OU has to do it too?
I think OU is smart.
That's what it feels like to me. It feels like
I think
they're tied together.
Enemies came together.
Yeah.
Frenemies.
Frenemies came together to better both of them, and then they were like, hey, let's come together. We'll do this together. Then we'll hate each other again once we're there.
If Texas came without Oklahoma, they'd look ridiculous. They'd look like they were leaving a conference that Oklahoma's won 7 years in a row. And I don't think Oklahoma would be able to get in without Texas. It's
a paired
they
deal.
They need each other. Yeah.
Texas runs the Big 12 from like a financial and program standpoint.
Yeah.
OU has run the
Runs
conference
it on the
from the field. So the two of them going into the SEC makes perfect sense. And again, I think that it's going to be great for the sport, and it's going to be a very fun thing to watch. Like you said, Oklahoma traveling to Athens, Oklahoma traveling to Gainesville. Like I as a football fan want to see that happen. What I don't want to see from an Aggie standpoint is everyone just crying about this. And that's all that I'm seeing from, like, maybe it's an older versus younger thing, but it's just like there are just so many people like, oh, rip Texas, rip the SEC. It's like, I'm not going to rip Texas. If I was Texas, I would want to be in the SEC too. If I was OU, I would want to be in the SEC too. I wanted A&M to go to the SEC in 2012 for the exact same reasons Texas and OU want to go to the SEC. So I'm not going to rip Texas at all, and I'm excited to see them play again and it actually matter.
How many more points you got? You got everything out?
I think so. I mean,
Okay.
did you think I was going to come in and like be sad? 'Cause I'm not.
No.
I don't even like. I talked to Billy Lucci forever today,
And
and
we'll still have a podcast by the time Oklahoma and
yes,
Texas. Okay.
yeah. Well, if we don't, we're gonna make sure somehow we do. Does that make sense?
You're right.
Like
yeah,
if it's
maybe,
dead, it'll resurrect.
Yeah, maybe it'll
But
come
it's not
back.
gonna be dead. I mean, unless one of us dies.
You never know.
guys
Brandon's
could
already
kill each
said he's
other.
going to Mississippi.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I'll probably be rich and famous by then. So
hopefully we'll
Maybe
all
it'll
be.
just be-
But you know what?
I'm not saying-
rising
I'm not-
ships. What is it? Can you say the quote? Rising
I'm not.
rising tides rises.
I don't know. I know what you're
Rising
saying.
tides
I don't
lift
know.
all ships is basically what it is. That's not what it
Yes,
says. But,
that's I mean that's the way it feels. I don't know. I talked to Billy to get the handprint or the foot, whatever it's called, to the touch on what College Station is.
Pulse maybe.
Pulse,
Thank
the
you.
pulse of Texas A&M, yeah. And he said there's a lot of people who are very, quote, I hate using this word, butthurt that they feel like they were slighted by the SEC, slighted by Greg Sankey, but also that there are a lot of rational people that are like, this is only going to make A&M better in the long run as long as they're able to succeed in this conference.
Well, A&M fans need to get over that little hurt. Texas fans need to get over this little premature or this momentary victory they think they
Katie's
feel by
shaking her
joining
head.
Yeah,
this.
I'm so sick and tired
They
of
gotta
Texas
get over
A&M
that.
and Texas going back and forth. I need a new rivalry.
Yeah, shut the fuck up already.
Everyone,
and
2 weeks off.
I
need it.
I literally said this before we walked in here. Like, going back and forth with Texas fans, like I have no interest in doing it. Now that we are going to play on the field, let's shut the fuck up. Let's see who actually is the better program in a conference that is the toughest conference, in my opinion, in the country from a history standpoint. You don't know what you're getting yet, Texas and Oklahoma. We don't know what we're getting with you, but what we do know is the competition's going to be fun, and if everybody is crying about it on one side and bragging about it on the other, it's just old news. They're both going to be in the Southeastern Conference. Let's
We
play,
missing
baby.
anything?
No.
We missing anything?
Nope.
Did I
just
make
what's
good points today?
Yes, very. Well, everyone made good points. Just what it's going to look like in a few years.
Who won?
There was no winner.
There was, I mean,
Who won the show?
The show did.
Can
The
I tell you
show
who I
won.
think
show
won the show?
won.
The listeners won the show.
I
Ooh,
thought Jack won the show.
Jack did a great job.
Thought Jack had 2 or 3 good points.
For sure. I think that the bigger picture is, and I'm going to just toot all of our own horns, is that if you listen to Texas radio right now, I don't know, I've not been listening to OU radio. You listen to A&M radio. Like, everybody's feeling in their feelings about themselves. Like, I think that we just basically said what I believe rational fans would think across the board.
Add who won the show to each show every week. We're gonna do
Okay.
that. Or every all right.
But
Okay.
who votes it though?
Oh, we do.
Or
Mostly
is it a
me.
democracy?
Yes,
Mostly
we
me.
that's
even
where
him
that-
out. We can't.
Mostly me.
That's where the democracy is
Yeah.
not.
He
He's
didn't
a
give it to
dictator.
I
himself.
didn't give it to myself. I gave it to Jack. I thought Jack
Yes,
won the show.
Jack did win. Well, I mean, also Jack's not an SEC fan either, so it's
It
like
was like easier for me to be rational.
but can we?
Not that you were irrational. I'm
oh no,
just
I
saying,
might be
like,
irrational for sure. I'm okay.
All right,
admitting
we're
I
going to
might
be
irrational.
back on Tuesday or Wednesday, and we're going to be very irrational and very emotional and very, very stupid about college football, like we
You
always
know-
But
are.
that's what makes it so fun. Let's just shut the fuck up, be irrational, and
Has
play
a,
football.
has a sport had any, like, pro or college had a better offseason than college football this year recently?
Certainly not a louder off season.
oh God.
NFL is having a
the
hell of
I
an
for-
offseason.
I'm about to
I
say,
forgot-
and the NBA has
And I
usually.
forgot-
NBA usually.
they-
I
pretty
forgot
dramatic.
about like when I mentioned everything changing in college football.
Yeah.
I mentioned 3 things. Didn't even mention the playoff.
Well,
Going
it's
from
a-
4 to
it's-
12
Yeah.
teams.
It's a whole dominoes. You have the college football playoff. You have the NIL. You have just a disgruntled D1 organization. Like, I don't know, probably 3 other super leagues in Europe. Kind of like all those things like rumbling towards each other at 60 miles an hour. It's
You know
coming
what's really
together and
interesting? That
exploding.
not one time did we bring up what the NCAA has to do with any of this. Like,
Well,
they're
they
dead.
don't,
Oh, I
though.
hope
I know
Mark
they're
Emmett
dead. That's
has
what I'm
money
saying. Like,
stored
they
up.
are so dead.
he's gonna be out of a
Like,
job
Mark
soon.
Emmett is like what's
Oh,
what's,
he's
he- what's he
useless,
doing
yeah.
right now?
Greg Sankey is Greg Sankey.
Mark
Yeah.
Emmett's checking his bank account.
All right, guys. Good.
Good.
Sweet.
Perfect.
Let's play, baby.
We'll be back next week.